The liberation paradox. Why letting go is the only thing worth holding on to. Here's something nobody wants to hear. You're going to lose everything you love. Your health will fail. People you can't imagine living without will die. That career you've built? Gone, eventually. The body you're walking around in right now? Already breaking down, cell by cell, as you listen to these words. And here's what makes this worse. You already know this. You've always known it. But most of us spend our entire lives pretending we don't. We build elaborate systems of denial, carefully avoiding the one truth that would change everything if we actually let it in. Buddhist wisdom calls this truth Anicca, impermanence. But this isn't some mystical concept from ancient texts. This is the most concrete, undeniable reality of your existence. So let me ask you directly, what are you building your life on? What do you think matters? And more importantly, when everything you're clinging to inevitably slips through your fingers, what will be left? Most spiritual teachings dance around this question. They offer you comfort, positive thinking, ways to cope with loss. But the Buddha did something different. He looked directly at the fact that everything ends and asked, is there anything that doesn't? Is there a happiness that can't be taken away? A peace that doesn't depend on circumstances? And he claimed he found it, not as a belief, as something you can actually verify for yourself. That's what we're exploring here. Not to depress you, not to make you renounce everything and move to a monastery, but to examine whether there's something you're missing, something that actually matters more than everything you think matters, and whether you're willing to look deeply enough to see it. Let's start with what you're probably not ready to accept. The foundation of your entire life is constantly crumbling beneath you. Every single thing you identify with, every source of security, every reason you think you're okay, all of it is in flux right now, this very second. Your thoughts aren't stable. Your emotions shift constantly. Your body replaces itself entirely every 7 to 10 years. Even your memories, those stories you tell yourself about who you are, they're being reconstructed and distorted every time you recall them. This isn't philosophy. Scientists confirm it. Neuroscientists can show you exactly how unstable your sense of self actually is. Physicists can demonstrate that matter itself is mostly empty space, held together by forces we barely understand. Biologists can explain how every cell in your body is a temporary configuration that exists for a moment before dissolving back into the environment. But here's where it gets interesting. If you actually sit with this, really let it land, the first response isn't enlightenment, it's terror. It's the question that keeps people awake at 3 in the morning. If nothing lasts, what's the point? Why build anything if it's all going to crumble? Why love anyone if they're going to leave or die? Why even get out of bed if everything you do will ultimately amount to nothing? This is the abyss that most spiritual teachings try to help you avoid. They'll tell you to focus on the present moment, to be grateful, to find meaning in the journey. And those things are fine, they're helpful even, but they're not what the Buddha was pointing to. He wasn't offering you a coping mechanism. He was asking you to look into that abyss and keep looking until you see something else entirely. Because here's what starts to emerge when you don't look away. Impermanence isn't actually the problem. In fact, it's the condition of everything you value. Think about it carefully. If nothing ever changed, you'd be trapped in your worst moment forever. That pain you felt 10 years ago, still there. That mistake you made, you'd be frozen in it eternally. Every moment of suffering would be permanent. Music only exists because sounds change. Stories only work because situations transform. Love only deepens because people grow and evolve through shared experience. The very possibility of improvement, healing, growth, or liberation depends entirely on the fact that nothing stays the same. So impermanence isn't destroying your life, it's making your life possible. The suffering comes from something else entirely, from your relationship to change, from the part of you that's constantly trying to freeze the good moments and push away the bad ones, from the voice in your head that's always saying, "This should be different," or "I need this to stay," or "I can't lose this." Buddhism has a precise term for this, Tanha. It's usually translated as craving or thirst, but it's more subtle than just wanting things. It's that quality of reaching, of leaning forward towards some future moment when things will finally be okay. It's the background dissatisfaction that colors even your good moments, the sense that something's missing, that this isn't quite enough. And here's the radical insight that most people miss. That thirst doesn't come from your circumstances. It comes from within. It's a pattern in your mind. Which means, and this is crucial, it can be changed, not by getting better circumstances, not by finally achieving your goals, but by seeing the pattern itself so clearly that it loses its grip on you. This is where most self-help completely misses the point. The entire industry is built on the premise that you can arrange your external conditions perfectly enough to finally be happy. The right relationship, the right income, the right body, the right career, the right location. And there's a grain of truth there. Conditions do matter. Poor conditions create real suffering. But even perfect conditions don't create the kind of peace the Buddha was talking about. Think about it. You've probably had moments in your life when everything was genuinely good, when you got what you wanted, when circumstances aligned. And what happened? For a while you felt satisfied, but then that background hum of what's next started up again, or you started worrying about losing what you had, or you noticed some new thing that wasn't quite right. The mechanism of dissatisfaction just shifted its focus. This is why the Buddha made such an audacious claim. He said the problem isn't that you haven't optimized your life well enough. The problem is that you're looking for security in things that are inherently insecure. You're trying to build permanent happiness from temporary conditions, and it's not working. It's never worked. It can't work. But here is where it gets really interesting. He also said there's a happiness that doesn't depend on conditions at all. Not because you become numb or indifferent, not because you stop caring about things, but because the compulsion to have things be a certain way falls away. The craving, the aversion, the constant reaching and resisting, all of it can actually cease. This is what nibbana means, and this is the most misunderstood concept in all of Buddhism. People think it's some mystical paradise you go to after you die, or that it's a state of blissed-out peace where nothing matters anymore. But the word literally means extinguishing, like a flame going out. What gets extinguished? Not you, not life, not joy or love or engagement. What gets extinguished is the fire of craving that keeps your mind in a state of constant agitation. Imagine for a moment what it would be like if your peace didn't depend on having anything. Not having a certain person stay in your life. Not having your health remain stable. Not having your plans work out. Not having people approve of you. Not even having pleasant feelings instead of unpleasant ones. What if you could be genuinely okay, regardless of what was happening? Most people hear this and think it sounds like depression, like giving up, like settling for mediocrity. But it's the exact opposite. When your peace doesn't depend on circumstances, you're actually more free to engage with life, not less. You can love more deeply because you're not clutching so tightly. You can work more effectively because you're not paralyzed by fear of failure. You can take risks because you're not trying to protect some fragile sense of security. This is the paradox at the heart of Buddhist practice. Letting go of your need for things to be a certain way doesn't diminish your life, it liberates it. You can still prefer pleasant experiences over painful ones. You can still work toward goals. You can still care deeply about outcomes, but you're no longer imprisoned by the need for things to go your way. And here's what makes this different from every other promise of happiness. This is the only thing that can't be taken from you. Your health can fail. Your loved ones can die. Your wealth can disappear. Your reputation can be destroyed. Everything conditioned, everything that came together from causes and conditions can fall apart when those conditions change. But freedom from craving, once realized, is irreversible. It's not a possession that can be lost. It's a seeing through, a release, a fundamental shift in how you relate to experience itself. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds impossibly distant, something for monks who've renounced everything, not for people with jobs and mortgages and families and responsibilities. But here's what's remarkable about what the Buddha actually taught. This freedom is available to anyone willing to walk the path. And the path doesn't require you to leave your life. It requires you to transform how you live it. This is crucial to understand because there's a massive misconception about Buddhist practice. People think you have to give everything up, shave your head, wear robes, meditate in caves. And yes, some people do that. But the Buddha spent enormous amounts of time teaching ordinary people, householders, merchants, farmers, parents, people who weren't going to become monastics. And he didn't tell them their lives didn't matter. He told them, here's how to live well right where you are. There's an entire discourse, the Sigalovada Sutta, where he gives detailed practical guidance on how to navigate relationships, how to treat your parents, how to be a good partner, how to raise children, how to be a trustworthy friend, how to work honestly. These aren't just nice ideas. According to the teaching, how you act has real consequences, not just morally, but practically. Generosity, kindness, honesty, these create trust, connection, peace of mind. They shape who you become and the world you inhabit. This is what's called conventional truth, the level at which your daily life operates. At this level, things genuinely matter. Your relationships matter, your integrity matters, how you treat people matters. And you don't transcend this level by ignoring it. You engage with it more skillfully, by understanding it more deeply. But there's also what's called ultimate truth, what you see when you look beneath the surface of things. At this level, everything you call self or mine is revealed to be a process, a constantly changing flow of sensations, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, moments of awareness. There's no fixed entity at the center, just movement, just arising and passing away. And here's what's critical. These two truths don't contradict each other. They're different depths of looking at the same reality. Like how you can see waves as individual, distinct entities, each with its own character. Or you can see deeper and recognize it's all water, all one interconnected movement. Both perspectives are valid. They reveal different things, and what matters depends on which depth you're looking from. This is why the path the Buddha taught, the Noble Eightfold Path, can be walked by anyone, anywhere. It's not about where you live or what you do for work. It's about how you see, how you think, how you speak, how you act, how you direct your attention. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. None of these require a monastery. Think of them not as a checklist you complete in sequence, but as 8 spokes of a wheel. They all support each other. They all turn together. When you begin to understand the nature of suffering and the possibility of freedom, your intentions naturally start to align with that understanding. You begin to orient toward releasing rather than accumulating, toward understanding rather than grasping. This shift doesn't require any external change. It happens in your mind, but it affects everything. How you speak becomes more careful. You notice when you're about to lie, exaggerate, gossip, speak harshly. Not because you're following rules, but because you see the consequences more clearly. How you act becomes more aligned. You notice when you're about to harm, take what's not given, use your sexuality in ways that cause suffering. How you earn your living matters. You start to see whether you're contributing to suffering or alleviating it. This is where the path touches your everyday life most directly. You can practice this as a parent, as a professional, as a friend, as a neighbor. It doesn't require a special environment. It requires honesty and care. And here's what's beautiful. These factors strengthen each other. Living ethically creates the mental stability that makes meditation possible. Meditation creates the clarity that allows you to see reality more clearly. Seeing reality more clearly naturally leads to more ethical living. It's a spiral that deepens over time. And yes, meditation is part of this, but probably not in the way people imagine. You don't need to sit for hours in perfect silence. Even 15 minutes of genuine attention each day begins to shift the patterns in your mind. The key is consistency, not intensity. You're learning to see what's actually happening in your experience, moment by moment. The arising and passing of sensations, feelings, thoughts. You're learning to be less automatically pushed around by craving and aversion. Every moment you notice craving arising and let it pass instead of acting on it, that's practice. Every time you speak with kindness when you could have been harsh, that's the path. Every breath you observe with full attention, that's a step toward freedom. You don't need to wait for some future enlightenment to experience less suffering. The path is the goal. Walking is arriving. And this isn't just theoretical. The historical records show lay people, ordinary people living in the world, realizing profound freedom. Householder Sita was recognized as one of the foremost teachers. Kyujutara, working as a palace servant, is said to have attained stream entry, the first stage of awakening, while still doing her job. King Bimbisara is traditionally regarded as having realized the teaching while carrying out his responsibilities as a ruler. Liberation within a single lifetime isn't reserved for renunciants. It's available to anyone who walks the path with sincerity and consistency. Not perfection, not some dramatic spiritual experience, just the willingness to see clearly and let go gradually. So we return to where we started. If everything ends, what actually matters? Maybe the answer is this: to love what's here without demanding it stay forever. To care for what's in front of you without losing yourself when it changes. To walk through this impermanent world with a heart that's learning, slowly, to let go. Not letting go of life, letting go of the struggle against life. The Buddha's final words, according to tradition, were an invitation. All conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence. Not a command, an invitation. The recognition that yes, everything ends, everything changes, everything passes away. And that very fact is what makes freedom possible. Because if your happiness depends on having something, it can always be disturbed. But if your peace comes from not needing things to be any particular way, nothing can touch it. This is the liberation paradox. The only thing worth holding on to is learning how to let go. The only security worth seeking is the security that doesn't depend on circumstances. The only happiness worth pursuing is the happiness that can't be taken away. Everything else, every relationship, achievement, possession, experience, is valuable and meaningful and worth engaging with fully, but none of it is where your deepest peace will be found. The path is here. The door is open. What you do next is entirely up to you.